Yes, thanks for the introduction and good afternoon. So I will start with the attract part about the Bijenkorf customer experience, and Chris will later on highlight the convert part. But first, before I start, a little bit about the Bijenkorf, a little bit of a background. So this is our vision. It's not only about inspiring, but also surprising, and we want to be a creative department store. So luckily, we also have an investment. Last 5 years, or 5 years ago, we started with a premium service strategy that's focusing on 7 stores and also the web shop. So we are focusing also as an omni-channel organization. And we have 200 million euros available to do so. So that was a good start 5 years ago. Mainly focusing also not only on store, but also online. Today, we will highlight the online part. And what else is the Bijenkorf about brands. So we don't only have on the left the expensive brands like Louis Vuitton, etc., but also on the right bottom we have Superdry, Markane, etc. So we have a variety of brands at the Bijenkorf. But to start the attract part, most interesting question we had, I think, already several years ago. We want to attract, of course, customers to our website, but what is the best approach to do so? And not only attract new customers, but we also want, of course, loyal customers to our site. So that's why we started with defining our target group. And I read an article last week in e-consultancy, and it's also one of the main priors I saw in the survey for, I think, all the marketers in this room. How can we create a single customer view, and also how can we use that data to get a personalized approach to the customers across different channels? And that's also the main part of my story, how we as a Bijenkorf organization try to succeed on that, because I think it's the biggest challenge we all have, to be relevant and also to create an interesting target groups as an organization. And the challenge we have as a Bijenkorf, of course, we are a department store. I think most of you will know the Bijenkorf the Bijenkorf stores. So we don't only have a lot of different categories like menswear, womenswear, etc. You can see it over here. We also have a lot of brands. I think we have 800 or 900 brands online in stores, etc. And that's from Ted Baker to Gastra, but also the cheapest versions like Topshop and the more and more expensive versions like Hermes or Louis Vuitton. We have cities, so of course we are here based in Amsterdam, a lot of tourists. In Utrecht you have more and more students, and in Maastricht you also see another target group or customers in the stores. And last but definitely not least, we also have diversity in our customers. And that was the interesting question you had several years ago. How can we be relevant for our customers? And for us, it started all with data. So we started with creating a single customer view. So luckily we have a lot of data available, but when we started a few years ago, we had it on different data points, but we didn't have it at one place. So we started to connect different data points to one central place. And that's not only customer data like your name, your birthday, but also your history, your buying history. So what did you bought in store or online, etc. We all connected that to one level. Later on, we included with browse data. So if you only look at buying history, the challenge is if people only buy twice a year, you only have a few items that you can use in your targeting. So that's why we also included later on browse data, and last but not least, channel interactions. Also interesting to see what kinds of channel our customers use and also how they interact in those channels. So great to have data available. But what are you going to do with data? You need to make it actionable. So that's why we defined segments. So we started clustering several brands. So for example, if you have Diesel and G-Star, you can connect those. McGregor, Gastra. So at the end, you could create several combinations of brand clusterings. And that's something we connected to our users or our customers. So what we've done is, if you buy something or if you click something on our site, it's all mapped to a brand, because we live from our brands that we sell, and that's something we flagged. So if you, for example, in this case, if you are if you buy Barber, Chantel, Diesel, for example, you're part of segment 1. If you buy other brands, we create a new segment for you, and that's segment 2. So at the end, it makes it easier for us to cluster our brands and see what kind of segments we have. But only a segment, we thought we can't do a lot only with segments, because you want to use it in your communication. So that's why the next step was style personas. So we started, I think, with 3. At the moment, we already have 7. So what we have done is we cluster several brands that you or bought or browsed online to a segment, and a segment became later on a persona. And the reason why we created persona was it's handy to have a lot of data and segments, but you also wanted to use it in your communication. And it's for us an easy way to define several target groups and create a face for the personas that they are at the moment. So we have, for example, the businesswoman, that's Karen in our case, or the hipster, or the fashionista. And that's something we have also created for men. And of course, I'm also a man, so the interesting question from my side to you is now, what kind of personas do you think I am? Is it 1, 2? What do you think? Koen? Who's saying that? Koen? No. So I'm during the week I'm more a businessman and a yup, but during the weekend I'm, for example, more a hipster. So it's also possible that you are several personas. But at the end, you always have one dominant persona, so it's not that you are split between 3 types. So that we see in the data that most people are more a businessman compared to a yup or a hipster. But it's also possible that you are part of several personas. So what we now have, we have data. We use the data to create one single customer view. We have segments, we have personas. So the next step was, how can we use that to create also not only understanding of our customers, but also how can we use that in our communication. So that's why we started to use the personas or the segments also, for example, within our email channel or the Facebook channel, to create a more and more relevant message for them, because we understand what their needs are or what kind of brands they like, and also we want to use that in our communication. And I think this is for us now also the turning point. So we are not looking at channels anymore on the right side, but for us the most important part is the customer. So who's the customer, what do they like, but also what kind of channels do they use? So where do they interact? Do they interact, for example, with the newsletter, or on Facebook, or on via bannering, etc.? That's all kinds of information that we use to create a more relevant message, and also to your preferred channel. And this is also something we use for finding new customers. So we use the data to look for lookalikes, but also together with big partners like Sanoma or Persgroep, they also have a lot of data themselves. So we use the same personas to also find the same profiles in their system, and right away try to target you with a more relevant message, because we hope already that we know what kind of brands or what kind of style you have. And this is something we can't do without tooling. So on the left side we have a lot of different toolings to receive a lot of data. That's something we all push in our data warehouse. So we also built, I think we started 4 years ago, still not finished, and I think at the end it's never finished. So we are including more and more data points, so we have all the data at one place. So we do 2 things with that. So not only it helps us to visualize it, so we use, for example, Tableau to also receive dashboards with more and more information, but also we use that in different channels. So for example, .mailer is for the newsletter part. Adform we also use as a DMP or an DSP, but and that's something I think we have to highlight also over here today. We use Adobe, for example, for the media part, so that's not only for the Facebook, but also for the search part. And we use also the data that we have from the customer inside those tools to create a more relevant message for you. And to give you a highlight of the kinds of communication that we use and also how that looks like is, for example, a newsletter. So on the left is Michael Kors. So that's, I think, one for the fashionista. On the right side, it's more on the for the business women. It's, for example, Karen Millen. So it could be that at one day we not sending out, for example, 2 newsletters, but could be that we send out 20 or 30 newsletters, depending on the kind of segments that we use. But this is definitely for us helpful to create a more relevant message to a relevant target group, also for men. So Ralph Lauren is more for the businessman. Stone Island, as an example, is more for the hipster. In campaigns, so we have a trends newsletter. It's not for the not for all. It's more for example, for the fashionista. Or if you have a business message, we only send it out to a specific segment. And it's very helpful for us to create a more relevant message on Facebook, already mentioned, Instagram, and last but definitely not least, bannering. And at the end, it brings us a lot of better performance in our online marketing channels. So what we saw, not only that we had higher open rates, but also the persons that were pushed to a segment also spent more at the Bijenkorf. We also saw that we all look at return on ad spend. So all the messages that we send out to our customers were more and more relevant. And at the end, they buy more via the communication of the channels that we use. And that's, of course, all about. So at the end, we want to have a more relevant focus for the customer. But of course, we also want to have a benefit for us as a Bijenkorf organization to not only create more relevant messages, but also to create, to have a more better performing channel. And last but not least, what are the next steps for us? So I think this is the point that we are currently on, but we can do more. So we don't use all the channels yet. So for example, the website is an interesting one, but also direct mail are one of the next channels that we also wanted to start sending the same messages. An NBA model. So we want to make it more easier for ourselves to use a model to helps us to create even more relevant messages over channels. And last but not least, I think we also going to a step further. So we have now 7 segments, but we want to create more and more micro segments also. And we think this is also for us an interesting way to become even more relevant for our customers in the future. So great that we have now a lot of customers on our site. They are interested because we hopefully already gave them a more relevant message. But how do they also convert? And that's something Chris will tell you.
Thank you, Judith. Yeah, so that's great. So we have all these visitors to our website, but how do we actually convert those? And at the Bijenkorf, I have identified basically 2 types of conversion. We work with functional conversion that most retailers work with. This is about average order value, on-site conversion, add to basket rates. So those are the basic functional conversion metrics that we work with. On the other hand, in the end, we are the Bijenkorf. We have a metric that we call emotional conversion. And emotional conversion for us is a lot more in the wow experience. So this could be a personal note with your package that you receive from your online order, or a surprise if you have a complaint from our customer care center. So the emotional conversion is something that's very important. If you go to the Bijenkorf store, the store windows, we will have the Turn on the Lights event on the 17th of November on the Dam Square. These are things that we organize and that give a wow experience. And this is something that we also want to translate to the online world. On the other hand, we also, a few years ago, recognized the shift to mobile. I think many of you have seen this shift. And for us, this was the reason to start a project to launch a new responsive site. But how do you start? I mean, we are a big company, there's loads of opinions. So how do you get started? Well, that's a huge challenge. And one of the first things we did, and I can highly recommend this book, Outside In, by Harley Manning, a Forrester researcher. And in his first chapter of the book, he describes the customer experience pyramid. And what it says is that every interaction that a customer has with your brand or your product, there's 3 levels on which they judge that interaction. And the lowest level of the pyramid is, did it meet the needs? Was I able to accomplish my goal? If you go a level up, it has to be easy. You don't have to work hard to actually do the interaction. And then on the top of the pyramid is it enjoyable? Did I feel good about the interaction that I had with the brand or the product? And you cannot go up into the pyramid without fulfilling the previous levels in the pyramid. So for example, if there's a flight attendant making funny jokes when you have the security announcements when you enter the plane, that's a lot of fun unless the plane's delayed for like 2 hours. Then it's suddenly not enjoyable anymore. So these are the first 3 things that we keep in mind when developing new features for our site and new functionalities. So we started sketching, mobile first. We had a big issue on our mobile site. The navigation was certainly not easy. It was easy. No, it met the needs. So you were able to browse to the products, you were able to purchase them, but actually the whole journey was suboptimal. So we started sketching these designs, and we made prototypes, which are just clickable prototypes. And we started walking around the office and asking feedback from our internal customers, which are the employees of the Bijenkorf. And that's all great, but in the end, it doesn't give you really good feedback on the functionalities that you develop and that you've come up with. So we were going to do this radically different thing. We were going to get out of the office. So we have these 7 beautiful stores with lots of refurbishments going on. If you now go to the Amsterdam store, it's beautiful there. Loads of marble and luxury brands. So those are beautiful stores where we see a lot of customers. And this was the point where we actually said, well, we're going to the store and we're just going to ask customers for feedback on the functionalities that we have developed. So this is what we call guerrilla usability testing. Our internal UX team goes to store every Wednesday, the whole day. They take their laptop, they take their prototypes, and they would just go and ask the customers for feedback on the functionalities that we have developed. And it actually worked really well. So one of the things that we did is, with the previous slide, I showed what we call the hub and spoke navigation, so an easy navigation for customers to drill down through the categories. And one thing we noticed is a customer at some point says, well, this feels like it's for dummies. And at that moment, we understood that we were on the right track with the new hub and spoke model that we were building, which is a key element on our mobile site. On the other hand, so this was the clickable prototype that we started testing with. We actually built the initial product. This is also something that we take to our stores and that we ask feedback on from our customers. And the first thing we noticed when we started testing with this clickable demo with code that actually the team had built, it turned out that it dropped down in the customer experience pyramid. It was still easy, but it was so slow that the customers got annoyed with the speed of the product. The touch areas on the mobile device were not correct. And this was very valuable feedback to also identify what the priorities are that we should focus on when building this new responsive site. And the customer feedback was extremely important there for us. So that's one thing that we do and take into account when we're building new functionalities for our site. So on the other hand, there's lots of different people shopping on our site. So how would these 2 people shop? Well, Mark Zuckerberg probably is not the kind of guy that's very interested in certain brands and the history of the brand and who's the designer of the current brand. He probably just wants his black t-shirt, walks into the store, and that's it. So he probably has done all his research. You approach him in the store, you approach him very differently. Whereas Oprah, you probably want to have a coffee with her, explain her about the designer, how the new styles that they've developed came together. So this is a whole different social type that you have in store. And this is something that we learned. Jorrit mentioned that we've invested 200 million in refurbishment of our store, in the online web shop, but we've also invested quite a bit of money in training the in-store personnel. So for all our store personnel, we've organized premium service trainings where we would go through the service ceremony, how to start a conversation, how to end a conversation. And we didn't do this for people that were in the service office, so the head office of the Bijenkorf. And we thought with the online team, why don't we just send everyone that is in the e-commerce team to the premium service training? It's not directly related to the things that they're maybe doing on a daily basis, but it's very important. So we sent everyone in the e-commerce team to this premium service training, and this is where we identified how they approach certain customers in store. So these are the social styles that we use in store to approach certain customers. And this is really important, because if you walk up to a customer and you start offering them a coffee while he's a Mark Zuckerberg type, then you probably offend them and they're not really willing to buy anything from you. So this is another thing that we keep in mind when we're developing new functionalities for our site. And the other thing that we still do is focus groups. We've had some bad experience with focus groups, because what we saw is that a lot of time when we do focus groups, it was from a selected group of customers that are the Bijenkorf fans, and they love everything we do, so it's not really honest feedback. So it's not the most ideal thing that we do for testing new functionalities, but there is still some really valuable feedback that we can get from those focus groups. We've recently done a few again, and there's some really interesting insights. For example, about payments on mobile. We had a few groups that were a bit older. They are very scared of paying on their mobile devices, where if you go to the bit of a younger group, they actually prefer to pay with their mobile devices, because it's so easy with Ideal these days to pay on your mobile device. Also, inspiration, something that we try to bring in store, is difficult online, and it's also different for different people. So the younger group, they don't get inspiration from going to our site. They get inspiration from browsing over Instagram and Pinterest and all these kind of things. That's what's for them inspiration. And that's what we saw when we also did the focus groups. Inspiration for different people is very different. It's very much about the product. People are looking for outfits and what goes well together. So that's very important also. So there's a load of input. There is the customer experience pyramid. There is the different social styles, and then there's the input from the focus groups. So how are you going to get all this online? How do you fix all this? And this is a quote I recently heard. You don't fix the digital, you fix the organization. And I think it's something that has been mentioned today earlier before. I mean, the digital is very important, and I'll show you a few slides of what we've done there. But the more important thing is the organization. So this is how we are organized in the e-commerce team of the Bijenkorf. So we have several disciplines: online trading, online marketing, customer excellence, and we also have business development, which is basically software development. We have an omnichannel IT director, we have a creative director, and we have a marketing director and a few more. But this is not how we actually work. We prefer to work in what we call multidisciplinary teams. So we're currently heading up to the festive season. It's a very important season for the Bijenkorf. And there's a big campaign that has started in stores, and we're actually trying to make a translation of the festive season campaign to the online world. And what we've done is actually we've put a team of software developers, people from the marketing team, from the creative team, from the online merchandising team. We've put them in an office location near our Amsterdam store on the Rock-in. And as a multidisciplinary team, so people with all different backgrounds, we're now building that campaign for the online shop. So the multidisciplinary teams are very important for us. And then, of course, there is the technology that's very important. So 3 years ago, our organogram would look completely different. I mean, there wouldn't be any software development. The team would be smaller. But we made this choice that technology is such an important thing for us as a retailer that we're actually going to insource most of the technology capabilities. So we have completely re-architectured our backend, which is a microservice-based layer now, with on top a very strong CMS. So this is Adobe Experience Manager that we use for our site. And that's very important. Because also for your internal customers, it needs to be enjoyable to work with a product. I mean, we had a very old CMS, which was basically a form on a database. It's not really fun to work with. Whereas with the current tool that we have with AEM, we can easily drag and drop components, change the layout of the pages very easily and see what it looks like. So this is also a very important thing. And actually what we see is that it all works. So we released our responsive site in May, and immediately we've done an extensive A/B test, of course, but what we see is there's natural growth in mobile conversion, but since we released the mobile site, it actually doubled compared to last year. So that's great. On the other hand, we also see that the UX that we've done is being recognized by other parties. So this is a recent research from Google, where Google did a pan-European research for all the different retailers, and we rank actually in position 9 for mobile UX. And more importantly, we also see the NPS that our customers rank us on increase. So we actually see good results there. So both on the functional conversion, which is the conversion that doubled, and the emotional conversion that we measure using NPS, we see great improvements there. And actually, that's what it's all about. I can only end this presentation with a slide of a cat, of course. So this is Olivier. Olivier's boss tweeted us with a request for another box because the cat wouldn't give up the box for the return that he was going to send us. And it's a really cute movie that you can find on Twitter. And what we actually did is we sent his boss, Jos, we sent him a box with some treats for the cat, satisfactions, some chocolates, and some toys for the cat, and of course the box to send the return. And this touches on all the different areas of the customer experience pyramid. It was easy, he could just tweet us from his mobile phone and we would react. With our Shipping Plus subscription, it was easy for him to do a free return. And actually the whole experience was so enjoyable for him that he started sharing the things online, on Twitter, and it actually went viral. So this was certainly an enjoyable experience for him. And this is of course an extreme, but this is what we would like to do for all of our customers and all interactions that customers have with our brand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian and Jorrit, of course, for your presentation and for this insight in the digital journey of the Bijenkorf, where you clearly have the customer and the experience front and center of everything you do. So great work, and I know that the Benelux team is extremely proud to partner with you and further advance your strategy. So great. There are a couple of questions that came in, so let's see if we can tackle a few. So feel free to take the question as you see most fit. Let's start with this one. Jorrit, you shared a lot of information on all the personas that you're building out. So you're going to have 12 personas, and some of them can even be combined, as you explained. So do you expect more, and what is the limit of this segmentation, this persona building, and how do you keep them up to date and workable over time? Big question, I would say.
But also an interesting question. So we get all the data in our data warehouse. So that's on a daily basis. So we update the segments at a daily basis. So that's, I think, the first question I thought. The other one is, what was the other question?
Well, it was about like, is there a limit? So what's your limit, and how do you keep them workable? Because I would think, I've been speaking actually about this topic last year as well, where as you segment, the rules of the game don't change. So you got to be personal, you got to be real time, you got to be relevant to this audience. So how do you keep up content-wise and fueling this across all the channels?
So I think the lowest level is brand or product, and we have created a sort of pyramid, and on the highest part is gender, and then you have styles, and then brands, and then products. And I think between brands and styles, there is still a gap. So that's why we are now thinking about micro segments. But I think that's it. And I don't know exactly the amount of extra personas that we will have, but at the end, it's also not manageable anymore. So that's why I don't see a lot more, but a few. How we are using it in our communication, for example, if we send out a newsletter about dresses, could be that the main image is for everybody the same, or we have only two for younger and older people, and the products are based on your personas. So it's depending also on the content, the amount of segmentation that we use. For the brands part, we only focusing on a certain persona with a brand, but it's depending also on the topic.
I see, indeed. And it's about an efficient content workflow and of course systems that help you there.
And we need the images. So if you want to send out 7 images on dresses to several personas, if you only have 3 images for dresses available, then we can't send 7 images. So simple is it.
Right. Thank you for that. Christian, maybe this one is for you. I'm just guessing, so hand it over if you feel like. How's your development team put together? So which external experts would you recommend doing this project, or is it totally done internally?
No, so as I tried to explain in my presentation, is we've started to insource development about 3 years ago. This is not an easy thing to do in an organization where all the IT is outsourced. So if we wanted to commit code to a repository, this was not possible because the internal network would block the port on which we would commit the code. So it's these kind of really basic things that we had to sort out. We started by building up a front-end development team who would work together with our external partner that did the initial build of our still our current e-commerce platform that does the checkout and for example, my account section. But then we soon started to notice that working with teams in different locations it didn't really work for us. So we said we're gonna scale up. We're gonna add a backend team as well. So my team is now about 30 people. We have front-end developers, we have backend developers, we have testers, product owners, and a UX team. And we work in squads. So in multidisciplinary teams, we have 5 squads, each with a different focus area. So there's one team focusing on what we call premium experience and service. There's one team focusing on checkout, one team focusing on product discovery, and so on. So we have 5 teams focusing on different areas. And what we try to do is cut the dependency on external partners as much as possible. We want to be fully able to do this ourselves and get the external partners in only for highly specialized projects or if we need to ramp up. So we still do get external experts in, but it highly depends on the project, and I see it more as coaching that we need for the teams.
I got it. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I'm seeing we're out of time. We're on a tight scheme here in this room, and actually we've got a follow-up session. So I want to say again, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jort. Thank you, Christian. I hope you all enjoyed it. And let's give a big hand for our presenters from the Bijenkorf. Thank you.
Yes.